I wasn't supposed to be home that early. The fishing trip was meant to be a whole weekend, just me, Eric, and a couple of other guys I'd known since high school. We were 3 hours out at Lake Dorian, beer in the cooler, rods in hand, no cell reception, just open water and silence. But on the second morning, the clouds rolled in like a slow, creeping threat and the weather alert crackled through the old radio in the cabin. Thunderstorm advisory, winds picking up. Eric wanted to wait it out. I didn't. So I packed my gear, said my goodbyes, and hit the road with rain spitting across the windshield the whole way home. When I pulled into our driveway, everything looked the way it always did. Haley's SUV sat parked, slightly crooked like usual. The porch light was off, it was just after 5 p.m. and there was this eerie kind of stillness hanging over the house. Not peaceful. Not welcoming. Just flat. I let myself in with the spare key I always kept clipped inside my tackle box. As soon as the door creaked open, I knew something was off. The air felt humid like someone had just run a hot shower. I paused in the entryway listening. No footsteps. No voice. Just the soft hum of the fridge and a faint ticking from the kitchen clock. I dropped my bag by the coat rack and wandered into the living room. Everything looked untouched, pillows fluffed, coffee mug on the table still half full. The blanket on the couch was folded neatly. I ran my fingers along the edge of the table, noticed the condensation ring left by a glass. Still wet. Then I headed down the hallway toward our bedroom, not really knowing what I was looking for until I found it. The chair. We kept this old upholstered chair by the window, a reading spot, though neither of us read much anymore. Draped across it was a tie. Berg *NY silk, dark with a faint paisley pattern. Sharp-looking. New. Not mine. Now, I'm not the kind of guy who notices fashion details. I couldn't tell you the difference between a dinner jacket and a blazer if my life depended on it. But I know what I own. And I sure as hell knew this wasn't mine. I picked it up, felt the fabric between my fingers. Smooth. Pricey. It was carefully laid out too, not tossed or forgotten. It had been placed intentionally. Like someone had planned to come back for it. Or someone didn't want it to wrinkle. That tie told a story and it wasn't one I recognized. For a moment I just stood there staring at it, my brain trying to come up with innocent reasons. Maybe it was a gift for me? But my birthday wasn't for another 2 months. Maybe it was a return she hadn't made yet? But Haley wasn't one to shop for men's clothes unless I was physically with her. Still holding the tie, I turned toward the bathroom. The door was cracked open and a faint trail of steam hung in the air like ghost breath. The mirror was fogged and the towel on the hook was damp, bunched up the way it looked when someone had just dried themselves in a hurry. Someone had taken a shower recently. I checked the bedroom again. The bed was made. The closet closed. No stray clothes. No unfamiliar shoes. I looked under the bed without even thinking, like some part of me had reverted to high school jealousy. Empty. But the weirdest part? The silence. The kind of silence that didn't belong in a house that was supposed to be shared. I stood there for a long time, still holding that damn tie, listening for the sound of her voice, a footstep, anything. But all I got was the ticking of my own pulse in my ears. About half an hour passed before I heard her car in the driveway. I quickly laid the tie back on the chair the way I found it, sat on the edge of the bed, and waited. I didn't even know why I didn't say anything right away. Maybe I wanted to see her face before she could prepare it. Maybe I wanted her to offer the lie before I asked for the truth. Haley walked in like nothing was wrong. Grocery bags in hand, sunglasses perched on top of her head, cheeks flushed like she'd been running around all day. She called out, "Ethan," and then stepped into the bedroom, surprised but not rattled. "Oh. You're back early," she said, setting the bags down with a thud. "Storm chase you off the lake?" I nodded. "Yeah. Got bad fast." She came over and kissed me lightly on the cheek, then sat on the bed across from me. She started unpacking milk, eggs, a couple bags of pre-cut fruit. Then she saw the tie. "Oh. That," she said with a laugh, brushing her hair back like she was embarrassed. "It's for a coworker. Travis. He had this formal thing last week and I helped him pick it out. I brought it over to his place so he could try it on and I guess I forgot to return it." She didn't blink. Didn't stutter. Just gave me that easy, polished smile she'd always used when explaining things that didn't need explaining. "Was it just sitting there when you got in?" she asked casually. "Yeah," I said slowly, pretending to sound amused. "Just didn't recognize it, that's all." She waved it off. "You know how I get when I'm running around. My brain's everywhere but where it should be." Then she leaned in and kissed me again. "Sorry I didn't clean up before you got back. I took a quick shower after yoga. Felt gross from earlier." I nodded. That was it. No drama. No confrontation. No wild accusation. Just a story that made sense, too much sense. Too smooth, too prepared. It wrapped the whole mystery up with a bow and offered me the comfort of not having to question it. But I didn't feel comforted. I felt cold. Numb. Something cracked inside me then, not loud, not dramatic. Just a quiet shift. A realization. I didn't trust her. And that hit me harder than the tie, the steam, or the carefully rehearsed smile. Because once doubt creeps in, it doesn't leave quietly. It unpacks. It settles in. It starts pointing at things you ignored before. It rewrites the past. So I didn't say anything else. I helped her put the groceries away, made us both a cup of tea, and talked about the storm. I asked about her day, listened to her talk about her coworkers, nodded at the right moments. But behind my eyes, I was building a list. I didn't make a scene. I simply started watching. I didn't sleep that night. It wasn't the storm. It wasn't the rain tapping on the windows or the distant thunder rolling over the hills. It was that tie still folded neatly on the chair like it was mocking me. Haley had brushed it off so easily, but something in her voice, something too perfect in the way she explained it, it stayed with me. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan, listening to the rhythmic hum of the blades slicing through the warm air. Next to me, Haley slept soundly. Or at least, she pretended to. Her breathing was even, but her body never turned toward mine, not once. It was like we were in two separate beds, sharing the same sheet out of habit. I don't know when I started replaying the last few months in my head, but once I did, I couldn't stop. Haley had always been a homebody. She hated staying late at work, always said anything past 5 was corporate cruelty. But lately, she'd been working overtime a lot, always for this big project, always for the team. The first few times, I didn't think twice. We all have seasons where work takes over. But then it started becoming routine. 3 nights a week, sometimes 4. And it wasn't just staying late, she'd come home looking wired, energized, like someone who'd been out partying instead of reviewing spreadsheets. Her gym habit changed too. She used to hate the gym. Her idea of cardio was chasing the dog through the backyard. But now she was up early every Saturday, sometimes Sundays too, dressed in expensive workout gear that I didn't even remember her buying. And she'd come back glowing. Not tired, glowing. Hair still a little damp, makeup perfectly reapplied, a second cup of coffee in her hand. Always 2 coffees. One for her. And one she claimed was just an extra. At first I joked about it. I'd tease her, someone out there must really appreciate your caffeine deliveries. She'd roll her eyes and say, don't be silly. But now, the joke didn't land the same in my head. Now I wondered who that second cup was really for. The real gut punch came a week after I got back from the trip. We shared a laptop, an old MacBook we mostly used for bills and calendar stuff. I opened it to check a payment for the lawn service and, without thinking, clicked on the calendar app. It opened up to the week's agenda, most of it empty except for a few recurring events. But one name kept popping up. Travis. I stared at it for a while. Tuesday at 7 p.m., dinner with Travis. Wednesday, Travis, pitch rehearsal. Friday, quick catch-up, tea. I didn't know what to make of it. My stomach turned just seeing the repetition. She'd never mentioned him more than once or twice. Always in passing. Travis forgot his USB again, or Travis is leading this new dumb initiative. Now suddenly he was on the calendar like a daily vitamin. I didn't open any emails. I didn't check her phone. Not yet. I told myself I needed to be sure before I crossed that line. But every instinct in my body screamed that something was going on. And the worst part? I had no proof. Just patterns. Just vibes. But vibes are enough when you know someone's rhythm, when you've built a life together. And hers was off. One afternoon, I casually brought him up over dinner. Haley was scrolling on her phone, one foot tucked under her in that lazy, relaxed way she always had. So, Travis, I said, spearing a piece of roasted carrot with my fork. She looked up slowly, almost like the name took a second to register. What about him? He's on the calendar a lot, I said, trying to sound curious instead of accusatory. You two working closely now? She smiled and shrugged. Yeah, for this pitch. He's leading it, but he's not great at public speaking. I'm helping him polish it. That's nice of you. She nodded. Yeah, well, someone's got to help the poor guy not crash and burn. She reached for her glass of wine, not once asking how I even saw her calendar. No suspicion, just a breezy explanation like she'd rehearsed it. But it stuck with me how unbothered she was, how quickly she turned the conversation to something else. She asked about my work, joked about my boss's weird ties. It all felt like smoke and mirrors. That night, I watched her as she brushed her teeth, humming softly to herself. She looked calm, serene, not like someone tangled in guilt, But maybe that's what scared me more, that she looked too calm, like she'd already compartmentalized everything. A few nights later, I noticed her phone had a new passcode. She used to leave it lying around unlocked. Not because she was careless, but because there was never anything to hide. We'd both read each other's texts when we needed to check something quickly. But now, the screen dimmed after seconds, and the password was different. When I asked if she changed it, she laughed and said, "Work made us update our security protocols." That was it. No further comment. Then there were the disappearing texts. I noticed it once by accident. We were watching a show, and her phone buzzed on the coffee table. The notification preview showed, "T, can't wait." And then she grabbed the phone, tapped something, and the message disappeared. Not into archives. Gone. I wanted to believe it was all work-related. I wanted to be the husband who trusted his wife. But I also didn't want to be the idiot everyone whispers about at brunch. That weekend, she told me she was going to a yoga class with some of the girls from the office. She left around 8 a.m. and came back close to noon. Hair tied back, skin flushed, a smoothie in hand, and 2 protein bars from the juice bar near downtown. I counted them. I noticed these things now. "You get me one?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. She froze for a split second. "Oh, I got one for Tara, but she ended up leaving early." That lie sat heavy between us like smoke that wouldn't clear. I didn't challenge it. I didn't accuse her. I just nodded and said, "Cool." But inside I was taking notes. By Sunday night, I started sleeping in the guest room. I told her it was because I was having trouble sleeping, and she didn't press me on it. She made a joke about me snoring and kissed me goodnight without asking why I suddenly needed space after 5 years of sleeping side by side. And that, more than anything, crushed me. If she had fought it, if she'd said, "Ethan, what's going on?" maybe I would have told her the truth, that I didn't trust her, that I could feel something unraveling, thread by thread. But she didn't. She let me drift away without even tugging the rope. I started going through our old photos. Not on purpose. I opened the wrong folder one night, and there they were: beach trips, anniversary dinners, blurry selfies with pizza boxes and bad lighting. We used to look so happy, like 2 people who had found shelter in each other. Now I didn't know what we were. Strangers with shared chores? One night, I dreamt I walked into our house and it was completely empty. Furniture gone, walls bare, just the echo of my own footsteps. And then I woke up to the sound of Haley laughing in the kitchen. Her phone pressed to her ear, her voice hushed. I stood in the hallway listening. She said "Travis" twice and "Don't be stupid" once, followed by a laugh I hadn't heard in months. When she saw me, she hung up fast. "Just Tara," she said, way too casually. "She's thinking about quitting." And that's when I knew. Whatever was happening, it wasn't nothing. It wasn't innocent. It wasn't all in my head. I still didn't have proof. But I had something better: conviction. And conviction is what gets you ready for the truth. That day I made a decision. No more pretending. I was done second-guessing myself. Done waiting for more signs to confirm what I already knew in my gut. Haley wasn't just slipping away. She was already gone. The woman who used to light up when I walked through the door, who used to wrap her arms around me before even putting down her purse, now barely looked up from her phone when I entered a room. But I wasn't going to make a scene. I wasn't going to yell, accuse, or fall into the trap of playing the villain in my own story. If I was going to confront the truth, I wanted it on my terms. Quiet, clear, undeniable. So I told Haley I'd be working late on Friday, even though I didn't have to. I watched her reaction carefully. No surprise, no protest. Just a nod and a quick, "Okay, babe, don't work too hard." That was all I needed to know. She wasn't concerned. She didn't ask questions. She had no idea I was watching her more closely than ever. Friday came. I left the house around 4 p.m., drove around the block, and parked 3 streets over. Then I waited. Her car was in the driveway. The blinds in the living room were partially open. Lights on. It was still early evening, the sun hanging low behind the trees. I waited in the car, gripping the steering wheel, every muscle in my body tensed like I was bracing for an accident. At 5:42 p.m., a car pulled into the driveway. Not a delivery driver. Not a neighbor. It was a gray Audi. Sleek. Clean. I didn't recognize it, but I didn't have to. I already knew. The engine cut, and the driver's door opened. A man stepped out, tall, clean-shaven, sharp suit. He walked up the porch steps like he belonged there. Confident. Comfortable. Haley opened the door before he could knock. She was smiling. Wide, glowing, genuine. That smile. God. I hadn't seen her smile like that in months. Not at me, anyway. I watched as she stepped aside to let him in, and then the door closed behind them. The porch light flicked on automatically, like the house was welcoming them into the evening. I waited another 30 minutes, just sitting there, not breathing, not moving, thinking about everything. Every excuse, every delayed response, every lie told with a practiced grin. My hands were trembling, but not from rage, from heartbreak, from that slow, dull kind of grief you feel when the thing you feared most stops being a possibility and becomes your new reality. I pulled out my phone and took a photo of the Audi. Then I stepped out of the car and walked. Each footstep toward my house felt heavier than the last. I didn't sneak. I didn't tiptoe. I walked right up to the front door, grabbed the handle and turned it slowly. It was unlocked. I stepped inside. Music was playing. Low, jazzy, too classy for casual listening. I followed the sound to the living room. And there they were, Haley and Travis. I recognized him from a holiday party last year. He'd been the quiet one in the corner, sipping wine and making small talk about spreadsheets. Now he was sitting on my couch in my house with his arms slung behind my wife like he owned the place. Haley was leaning against him, barefoot, her heels tossed carelessly onto the rug. Her legs were tucked underneath her, and in her hand was a glass of red wine. His hand rested on her knee, his fingers curled loosely like he'd done it 100 times before. I didn't say anything. Not right away. I stood in the doorway, silent, letting the moment stretch. I wanted to see how long it would take for them to notice me. Took a full minute. Then she looked up, and everything froze. Her body jerked upright like she'd been hit by lightning. The color drained from her face. Travis flinched, his hand dropping like it had been burned. Haley's mouth opened, then closed again. Her words stuck somewhere behind her lips. Ethan. That's all she managed before I held up my hand. Don't. My voice was quiet, level, but it cut through the music like a blade. I didn't look at Travis. I didn't need to. I kept my eyes on her, on the woman who had once promised to stand by me through anything. I looked at the way she was dressed, soft, casual, effortless in a way she never was around me anymore. I saw her wine glass, the second glass on the table, the crumpled napkin with lipstick stains. I saw it all. Haley stood slowly. I can explain, she said, her voice brittle. You don't have to, I replied. There was nothing to explain. Nothing left to unravel. The truth wasn't hiding anymore. It was sitting in plain sight on my couch with its shoes off. I pulled off my wedding ring, the metal cool against my skin. It had left a pale band on my finger, one of those marks that takes weeks to fade. I walked to the dresser in the hallway, the one where we kept our keys and old mail, and placed the ring on top of it. Then I turned around. Haley took a step toward me. Ethan, please. I'm done, I said. You don't have to say anything. I get it now. I walked out without slamming the door. No shouting. No threats. No drama. Just silence. And that silence said more than any argument ever could. I got in my car and drove. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't be in that house one more second. My hands gripped the steering wheel like it was the only thing anchoring me. I could still see her face in my mind. Shocked, scared, guilty, but not sorry. Not really. I ended up at a motel 15 minutes away. Cheap, quiet, the kind of place people stay when they need to disappear for a night. The clerk didn't ask questions. I paid cash, took the key, and let myself into a room with creaky floors and faded curtains. I sat on the edge of the bed, fully dressed, shoes still on, and stared at the wall. My phone buzzed once, twice, then 5 more times. I didn't look. The weight of what I'd just done started to settle in my chest. I felt numb, like I'd been floating outside my own body for the past hour. Like the real me was still standing in that living room, staring at the wreckage of the life I thought I had. Eventually, I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. 7 missed calls. 4 texts from Haley. The first one read, "He's gone. Please come home." The second, "Ethan, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen." Then, "Please let me explain. There's something you don't know about Travis. And finally, you're not the only one. He slept with Derek's wife too." That last one stopped me cold. Derek, my supervisor, my friend. He and I had worked together for 6 years. We'd been on each other's Christmas card lists. Our wives had exchanged recipes. And now, apparently, his marriage had been gutted by the same guy who'd just torched mine. I stared at the message. For a long time, I didn't know what to do. But one thing was suddenly clear. This wasn't just about me anymore. I stayed at the motel for 3 days. No bags. Just a change of clothes from a nearby store, a toothbrush from the vending machine, and my phone, which I kept in airplane mode most of the time. I didn't want to see her name on the screen. I didn't want to hear her voice in a voicemail. I needed the noise to stop. But even in silence, her words echoed, "You're not the only one. He slept with Derek's wife too." It had been nearly 24 hours since I first read that message, and I still couldn't wrap my head around it. Derek and Brooke were the couple you pointed to at parties and said they've got it figured out. The kind of people who hosted backyard barbecues with matching aprons and genuinely seemed to enjoy each other's company. I had known Derek since my first day at the firm. He mentored me, vouched for me, invited me to his house for Sunday dinners. And now this? I paced the motel floor like a man stranded on an island, barefoot, restless, needing to do something. At one point, I opened my contacts, thumb hovering over Derek's name. I didn't know what I was going to say. I just knew I couldn't sit on this forever. But I didn't press call. Not yet. Instead, I went for a walk. The motel was across from a strip mall with a gas station, a pizza place, and one of those chain coffee shops that always smelled like burned espresso. I wandered into the shop, ordered a plain black coffee, and sat by the window watching cars come and go. I don't know how long I sat there before my phone buzzed again. A new message from Haley. "I know you don't want to hear from me, but I'm telling you the truth. Travis was sleeping with Brooke. Ask Derek. You'll see I'm not lying." I read it once, then again. And then I hit call. Derek answered on the 3rd ring. "Ethan?" His voice was confused, cautious. "You okay, man?" There it was, that voice that had always grounded me. I almost hung up. But I didn't. "Hey," I said, trying to sound normal. "You got a minute?" "Yeah, sure." "Everything all right?" "No," I said too quickly. "Actually, no." There was a pause. "Where are you?" I told him. He didn't ask why. He just said, "Come meet me at the junction." "Back patio." 15 minutes. The junction was our usual spot, a low-key cafe near work where we used to vent about clients, swap stories, K*LL time between meetings. It felt weird driving there now, like I was stepping back into a life that didn't belong to me anymore. When I arrived, Derek was already there. Same khakis, same button-down, same calm expression. But as I got closer, I saw something in his eyes. A heaviness. A suspicion, maybe. Like he already knew something was off and was bracing for the impact. I sat down. We didn't speak at first. The waitress came and we ordered coffees we wouldn't touch. Then I pulled out my phone and showed him the text from Haley. He read it silently. His jaw tightened. He didn't say anything for a long time. Finally, he spoke. "Brooke's been distant," he said slowly. "But I thought it was work stress." "I didn't," he broke off. "Travis?" I nodded. "I barely know the guy," Derek muttered. "Brooke mentioned him once. Said he was charismatic. I didn't think anything of it. I watched him carefully. I caught Haley and Travis in my living room Friday night." Derek's head dropped, one hand dragging down his face. "Jesus." "Yeah." We sat there, 2 men drinking nothing, saying everything with our silence. After a while, he pushed back from the table. "I need to know for sure," he said. "I'll come with you," I offered. He looked at me, really looked at me. "You sure?" I nodded. "If the roles were reversed, you'd do the same." He didn't thank me. He just stood up and said, "Let's go." The drive to Derek's house was quiet. We didn't play music. We didn't make small talk. We just stared out at the road ahead, both of us suspended in that limbo where your life hasn't changed yet, but you know it's about to. When we pulled into the driveway, Brooke's car was there. Lights on inside. Derek K** led the engine and sat with his hands on the steering wheel. "You don't have to come in," he said, not looking at me. "I want to," I replied. We walked up the path together. He unlocked the door, stepped inside, and called out, "Brooke!" She was in the kitchen, on her phone, casual as ever. She turned, surprised to see both of us. "Hey, what's up?" she asked, wiping her hands on a towel. Derek didn't answer. He walked straight to the kitchen island, pulled off his wedding ring, and set it down with a soft clink. The sound hit like thunder. Brooke's smile faded. "Derek!" He didn't yell, didn't accuse. He just looked at her with eyes that had seen too much. "I know," he said simply. Brooke's face paled. She didn't deny it. She didn't ask what he knew. That alone was enough of an answer. I stepped back, letting them have the moment. Derek turned to leave and I followed. Outside, the sky was turning purple with dusk. The wind had picked up, carrying that smell of distant rain. We stood by our cars, the gravel crunching beneath our feet. "You were right," Derek said. "I wish I hadn't been," I replied. We stood there for a while, two men whose lives had just cracked open, and neither of us tried to glue anything back together. We didn't talk about plans. We didn't ask each other what came next. We just stood there. And for the first time in days, I didn't feel completely alone. I didn't go back to the motel that night. After we left Derek's house, he just stood in his driveway, staring into nothing. I waited with him for a while, neither of us saying a word. Eventually, he looked at me and said, "You want a drink?" I nodded. We ended up in his garage, an unfinished space with a bar fridge, a workbench, and a couple of dusty stools we hadn't used since we built his fire pit 3 summers ago. He cracked open 2 beers, handed me one, and sat down like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. "I feel like an idiot," he said quietly. "You're not," I replied. "We both just trusted the wrong people." He gave a humorless laugh. "Is that supposed to make me feel better?" "No," I said, "but it should make you feel less alone." That was the truth. We weren't alone. We were 2 sides of the same wreckage. 2 guys who had built stable, ordinary lives only to find out they'd been sitting on top of fault lines. And the ground had just split beneath us. We stayed out there for hours, mostly in silence, sipping cheap beer and letting the numbness settle. At one point, Derek pulled out his phone, stared at it, and then put it away again. "Do you think they're still lying?" he asked. "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe they think the worst is over and now they can start telling the truth." He nodded, not convinced. "You gonna talk to her?" I asked. He shook his head. "Not tonight. I think she said everything she needed to with that look on her face." We parted ways just before midnight. I crashed on his couch, which smelled faintly like their old Labrador, Molly. The dog had passed away last winter, and they'd sworn they weren't ready for another. That night I kind of missed her. She would have understood without words, would have just laid her head on my knee like the world hadn't just turned upside down. The next morning, Derek made us both coffee. No breakfast, no chatter. Just 2 mugs, hot and black, handed off like battlefield rations. We sat on the porch as the sun rose behind the trees. And then he asked it, "What do we do now?" I didn't answer right away, because honestly, I didn't know. But later that day, I figured it out. We use the truth. We make them face what they've done, not just with tears and apologies, but with the knowledge that their choices weren't isolated, that their web of lies had reached other people, that what they did wasn't a private affair, it had collateral damage. And we were it. That evening, I sent Haley a text. "I'll meet you tomorrow at noon. Cafe Midtown. Don't be late." She responded instantly, "Thank you. I'll be there." I didn't tell Derek I was meeting her. I wasn't ready to drag him back into the thick of it. This was something I had to do myself, face to face. The next day, I got to the cafe early and took a seat by the window. I ordered a coffee but didn't touch it. I just sat there, watching people come and go, each of them living in their own world, unaware of mine unraveling thread by thread. At exactly noon, Haley walked in. She looked different. Not in a physical way. Same careful hair, same muted makeup, same tan coat she always wore when she wanted to look put together. But there was something in her eyes. Not sadness, not guilt, just tiredness, like she hadn't slept in days. She spotted me and approached slowly. "Hi," she said, her voice tentative. I didn't respond. I just gestured to the seat across from me. She sat down, folding her hands in her lap. "Thank you for meeting me," she said. "I didn't think you would." "I'm not here for closure," I replied. Her face tightened. "Then why?" I pulled my phone from my jacket and slid it across the table. "Read the last message you sent me." She glanced down. When she saw it, she swallowed hard. "I meant it," she said softly. "You're not the only one he hurt. What he did with Brooke, it wasn't just a fling. It was manipulative. He knew exactly what he was doing." I watched her closely. "So tell me, how long were you with him?" Her eyes darted away. "It started months ago. I don't even remember exactly when. At first, it was just flirting. Harmless. Jokes in meetings, texts after hours. And then..." She trailed off. "You made it easy for him," I said. "You told yourself you were in control, didn't you? That it was just attention, nothing serious." She nodded, her voice barely audible. "I thought it would stop before it got too far. But it didn't." "No." I leaned back, arms crossed. "Do you know how many nights I laid awake thinking it was me? Wondering what I did wrong?" Tears welled in her eyes. "It wasn't you. That's the problem, Haley," I said. "It was me. It was my life you stepped into every night with your lies. It was my bed you crawled into after being with him. You don't get to say it wasn't me." She didn't speak. She just sat there, letting the truth sting the way it needed to. I waited a moment, then said, "Derek knows." Her head snapped up. I showed him the message. We went to his house. He confronted Brooke. She looked stunned. "I didn't tell him for revenge," I added. "I told him because he deserved to know. Just like I did." Haley wiped at her eyes. "I never wanted to hurt anyone." I shook my head slowly. "But you did. And you kept doing it even when you knew." "I was scared," she whispered. "Scared to end something. Scared to face what I was doing." "Were you scared when you invited him into our house?" Her lip trembled. I leaned forward. "You're not the victim here, Haley. You made choices. You lied. You cheated. And you protected the man who blew up 2 marriages like it was nothing." She looked like she wanted to speak, but I didn't give her the chance. "I'm filing next week. The papers are already being drawn up. Don't bother asking for reconciliation. I'm not here to forgive. I'm here to make sure you understand that you didn't just lose a husband. You lost me, the person who used to believe in you." Her shoulders slumped. "I'll cooperate with whatever you need," she said quietly. "I won't fight you." I stood. "Good." She looked up one last time. "Ethan, I hope one day you can move on. Find peace." "I will," I said. "But not because of you. In spite of you." And with that, I walked out. The air outside hit me like a wake-up call. Cold. Brisk. Honest. I didn't look back. Later that night, I called Derek. "You okay?" he asked. "I am now," I said. I told her everything. He was quiet for a moment. "Then, feels different once you say it out loud, doesn't it?" "Yeah," I said. "It does." There was a pause. "You know," Derek added, "we're not the same guys we were a week ago." "No," I agreed. "But maybe that's a good thing." We talked for a while. About lawyers, about logistics, about what came next. And then we didn't talk at all. We just sat on the line, sharing the kind of silence that's heavier than words but also more honest. The next day, I started packing. Not just Haley's things. Mine, too. Because I wasn't just leaving a house. I was leaving who I had been. And I was finally ready to start becoming who I needed to be.